Why work with my hands? I don't even know. It's a hard question to answer because it's all I've done for like my entire life is work with my hands. When people do hands-on things and you see that like little light bulb go off, be like, oh, this is like really fun. And then they get like the tunnel vision. I love that feeling of like just the flow state of yeah, I'm in this. I think that's the drug. That's like what people come back for and why people get addicted to it, because you get into a flow state that is not like anything else. Hey, I'm Michael Alm from Alm Fab. I'm a woodworker and I'm in Seattle, Washington. I just kind of looked at a map and was like, Seattle sounds cool. And then I flew out here during the summer. My mom encouraged me to go visit before I just decided to move. So I flew out here and met a few people, ended up finding a job, and they decided to hire me like that September. So I moved out here, not expecting to be here for more than a couple of years, but I fell in love with it. It's the best place that I've ever lived. I love it out here. Yeah, it's a very pretty city. I mean, there's views in every direction. We're surrounded by the Cascade Mountains back there. You can see Mount Rainier over there, and then the Olympics on the other side of West Seattle here. And it's just incredible. So I've been doing woodworking for a long time. I've done a lot of different versions of it. I worked at museums. I've built all sorts of different things. I used to do a lot of furniture for clients. Nowadays, more of what I do is produce videos for YouTube and other social media sites. So I call myself a YouTube woodworker at this point. I mostly build things that I find really interesting and things that will challenge me in the shop, things I've never done before, or things that are just stepping up my craft every single time I build something. So my dad was a major influence on my creativity. He brought me into the wood shop really early on. We moved around a lot as kids and we changed houses a bunch, but my dad always found a spot in the house to put some sort of shop. He built little shops in like basements or garages, and I was able to, if I had an idea, he would take me down to the shop and we would see what we could do to make it happen. So as a kid, I was really interested in artwork. My mom was always putting me into like extracurricular art classes, and art teachers just seemed to be like, they kept telling my mom that I needed to keep doing this. And fortunately she listened, and she just kept encouraging me to make more and more art. And when I got into high school, I got into theater and building sets. I ended up going to art school in college and studying sculpture, and it was amazing. I had access to every single tool that could have been imagined, so I tried everything. I tried welding, I did a bunch of steel sculpture, I did some ceramics work, and then I found woodworking and really loved it. And when I moved out to Seattle, the only tools I could afford were woodworking tools. They were easy to buy off of Craigslist, so I bought a whole bunch of those, set up a shop, and the rest is kind of history. I have a hard time describing my job to other people. I mean, I generally, if I'm at a party or something, I will either just say I'm a woodworker, or if I'm feeling like talking, I'll be like, I'm a YouTube woodworker, and that leads to a lot of questions about it. Mostly it's like, how do you make money? And I feel like that's great. I just wanted to make interesting stuff in my garage. I was taking on a lot of client work, and I didn't like the client work that I was getting. It was really uncreative, and it was just the same thing over and over again. They would see something on my website, I built a bookcase, and they're like, oh, I need a bookcase. Michael, can you build that same bookcase for me in my house? And I was like, yeah, I can, but it's getting kind of tiresome and it's not very fulfilling for me. So I saw what all these interesting people like Jimmy DiResta and David Picciuto and kind of the OG crew were doing on YouTube, and they were experimenting and having fun and making interesting stuff. And I I was like, I want to do that. I want to make some cool stuff. So I felt like if I made videos of the work that I was making and I put it out on the internet, that my clients would see that and be like, oh, Michael can do more than just build a bookcase. And that was the plan. It kind of went sideways or changed up a lot when I got deeper into it, because really what ended up happening is I grew an audience, not a client base. I'm still like a sculptor at heart, so I really like to make sculptural things. Power carving is still a love of mine. Like, I did the melting table a few years ago, and that was one of my favorite builds ever. And I just made wood look like it was melting over the top of a steel cabinet. And pattern plywood is this whole beast unto itself. So I've been developing all these different patterns in my shop out of the edge grain of plywood. Basically, I rip plywood into strips and re-glue it together, exposing the edge of the plywood, which has a whole bunch of stripes in it, and that creates all these different intricate patterns. And when I started doing it, I made one for the Rockler one piece of plywood challenge, and I made this cabinet out of it, or it was like a little toolbox out of edge grain plywood, and I found one pattern, and as I was making it, I literally was like, okay, so if I cut this smaller, that changes the pattern. If I make the boards wider, it changes the pattern. If I cut them on a different angle, that changes the pattern. And all my brain just started going to all the different places that I could. And now, I mean, I think I've developed over 20 different patterns out of plywood, and I have dozens more. And every time I launch into it, I discover more stuff about it. So it's kind of a never-ending fountain of inspiration. When I'm kind of stuck, I'll just futz around with pattern plywood a little bit. Woodworking is such a deep well of inspiration. It's just endless. I'm never without inspiration. I'm more just without time. I'm like, I always want to do more and make something and try something different. So this is pattern plywood. So it starts its life out like this, right? So you've got all these different plies. So I use Baltic birch plywood, which has really consistent, clean plies. You cut it up into different strips and different angles, and you use that. You basically glue it up into like logs of them, and then you cut them into individual tiles, and then glue those tiles together so they match up. And then I started adding in colored veneers recently, and then that just takes it to a whole different level. So this is the same pattern as this, but I've glued skateboard veneers in between or on the surface of them and then cut them up. So you start with a big chunk like this, and you can see when it's glued up. So we have like I said, logs that are, about this long, glued them up in the pattern. And then as you carve this, it starts to go to the side pattern. So when I used it on the lathe, you can see there's the main pattern. That was the glue up. The logs were glued this way, and as it rotates, the pattern changes. And it looks really cool on the inside. There's just endless things that you can do with pattern plywood. Just came back from a museum show. "2014, wow, it's old. It's 10 years old? Oh my God, that's depressing." Okay, so it's made out of walnut scraps. I worked at a frame shop at the time, and I just grabbed all of the off-cut walnuts. So these are all just strips from making picture frames. And I sort of roughed them up, and like, I like this kind of sinewy look. It's trying to replicate muscle sinew. And then I've got an armature inside of here. So there's a plywood core that runs through here, and then balsa wood carved elements making up the legs and the sort of rib cage and the butt, and the head, I think, is basswood with the walnut nose. You soak thin strips of wood in water, and it becomes really pliable. And then you glue it to the surface, and as it dries, it kind of gets a memory. The ears are literally built inside of a mold and then popped out of the mold. So it's almost It's kind of like steam bending. It's kind of like bent lamination. As it glues together, it's stronger and stronger. The cedar is all from it's like gerbil bedding, and glued it on just piece by piece, one at a time. I stopped taking clients in 2021. I think was my last client, and everybody's like, when did you go full time? I am full time YouTube content creator, maker, whatever you want to call me. I'm closer to a media company than I am. I don't know. I'm like more. I'm video production is about half of the job. It might actually be more than half of the job. I think I spend more time on the computer than I do in the shop, which is something I'm trying to shift in the other direction. This is the melting table. I made it several years ago. It's all carved what do they call this? Quilted maple. And it's got kind of a hidden drawer here, which is full of dog toys, and Winston knows that. Steel base, kind of faux steel sides, and I power carved it using some, basically an angle grinder. I actually made two of these. I made a walnut version of it, which I didn't film. I think I made it as a commission for a friend, and I wish I had filmed it because it came out kind of looking like chocolate. So this is a rec cabinet that I built probably, it's like in the first 5 or 10 videos that I made. But yeah, so this is an old countertop material from a kitchen that I built, and then I just had enough left over to make this record cabinet. It's got wooden drawer slides and all the accessories that go with, audio gear, some gaming stuff as well. Stores all of our records and lots of plants too. This is a light fixture that I built for Ashley's desk. It's made out of course on white oak, and I actually I power carved the outside of it. This is solid brass, and there's a couple holes that run the electrical through, and all the electrical is kind of hidden in the inside. This thing is all hollowed out. And then I use color cord for the cord, and I like this kind of asymmetrical cord look with these kinds of light fixtures. It's my first time working with a lot of brass. I've used brass for small aspects, but this was super fun because I actually used like a router on the brass to trim it to the same size as the white oak. This is one of my art pieces from, I don't know, probably about 2014 or so. They're plywood antlers that are pressed into a mold and then power carved back. And then it's a wooden skull armature that's made with wet bent pieces of, I think it's poplar that's on there, and then carved poplar teeth as well. It's got a dowel that sticks up into the skull that supports it. I kind of like it because the wood sort of, I let it break apart and stuff so that it looks like sort of like an old skull that might be sitting out in the woods or something like that. All right, so this is the pattern plywood bowl that was made. It's called a stave bowl. It's a technique that wood turners use, and I just found out about it on Instagram, and it was you can set different like compound angles to get these. There's like a calculator, and it's a bunch of math to figure out. But I made a bunch of panels and then cut them down, with those compound angles, and then taped them together and glued them up. And it's just a wild piece. With the pattern, I like reversed. This was Ashley's idea. I to reverse the pattern and have these little windows in them, essentially. And then this is also, it's got the veneers are glued to the plywood before it's cut into the pattern, so that's what gives all the black stripes. And this was, I think, might have been the first thing that I did. My viewers called it dragon scale, and I've been calling it that ever since. So that's what's like on my hat right now is the dragon scale pattern, and it's become one of my favorite patterns. It's been several years since I took a client, but I realized as I was getting sponsors and as I was getting ad revenue and stuff like that, that what I needed to do was just actually take the risk and take the plunge. And I knew that it needed my full focus and attention for it to be done well and done right. Advice for somebody who's getting started in this content creation world is like, I just say do the work. I feel like a lot of people say this, but it really is the truth. Like you just have to you have to put in the effort, devote yourself to it, and just make videos. Like, don't stop thinking about making videos, stop thinking about ideas for videos, like actually physically get in there and do it, because that's how you learn the fastest. That's how you get to know your audience. Like, people ask me for advice on thumbnails or, you know, on title ideas or like concepts for videos, or is this a good idea for a video, or is that a good idea for a video? And I'm like, I don't know, because I don't know your audience. And if you haven't built your audience, or if you haven't started to figure out who your audience is, my concept for a video isn't gonna work the same way on another channel. Starting from scratch is very hard. There's nothing easy about it. And I think the best thing to do is to pick a project that you're excited about, something that you really want to engage in. Don't worry so much about how good your video is, just build something that you're passionate about and go from there, because that's the starting point. That's where we all started. But if you're focused on your personality, what drives you, what you're excited about, like what creative interests you have, then you're gonna be good, and you will find an audience, as long as you put in the work. I mean, is this all easy? I mean, no, it's a hard job. I think it's a job that you have to be passionate about to want. Yeah, I get free stuff. There's no such thing as free. Everything comes with strings attached. But I mean, this job is hard. I mean, I've had loads of moments where it's like, can I even do this? Can I reach these deadlines? Can I make this happen? Like, I hate to complain about it, because I do think it's the best job I've ever had, and it's amazing. But it's still a job, and so there's moments where you're like, what am I even doing? Or, you know, why I'm working so hard and so many hours, working on weekends. You know, the early days, Ashley, my partner, fortunately, she was very supportive through all of it. I'm still working hard, but it's not. I'm working more regular hours, and I'm not working late into the night. So that's a lot better. I also have people who support me. I've got my buddy Eric, who helps me with editing, and he's been with the channel from the very beginning. He's one of my best friends, and it's not an easy job, but if you're passionate about it, it's a really fun job. I mean, I get to meet some of the coolest people. I get to do some stuff that I never thought I would ever get to do. I mean, building the boat with Jason Hibbs was ridiculous and so fun. That's one of the best weeks of my life. Like going to Maker Camp and kind of meeting your heroes. Hanging out with Jimmy DiResta and hanging out with, all these just incredibly talented makers, and having access to those people where you're just like, I can send a DM to like so many amazing woodworkers being like, I'm stuck, let me know, like, how do I fix this? That's something that is invaluable and absolutely amazing. I never thought I would be a part of a community this big and just such cool, just the nicest people in the world. I always talk about, like, when I was a kid trying to learn how to make stuff was really weird and hard. But now, like, I can reach out, I can put out a message on Instagram being like, hey, is anybody like familiar with sharpening this kind of gouge? And I'll get probably 5 to 6 people responding with like detailed answers, tutorial videos and stuff like that. So the game's changed a lot. And I think we're all becoming so much better woodworkers than we ever imagined. So many of my friends in the community are like, I mean, they've just become such experts just by being online. And I feel like there's always this stigma about being a YouTube woodworker. But I mean, we're schooling ourselves and we're pushing the limits. Like, we're doing stuff that hasn't been done in woodworking before. But now there's so many experimental things that people are doing, whether it's with epoxy or whether it's with steam bending. I feel like I started a bit of a trend of tambour, which I'm so excited about because tambour is amazing. And I did a couple of videos. And I love watching other people do it because I'm like, I came up with this little tiny addition to making tambour, and I see makers throughout the community, whether they got it from me or the next person down the line, using like painter's drop cloth as the backer for it. But like the painter's drop cloth, when I see somebody cutting up a painter's drop cloth, I'm like, that's for me, that's for me. So we're in this like sounding chamber where people are just growing together and developing these cool ways of building. It's just getting better and better every year. It gets people are amazing. What inspires me? So I'm inspired by a lot of stuff. Obviously the maker community is a huge inspiration. I'm a YouTuber because I love the platform. I was addicted to it, 5-6 years before I even started my channel. In the early days, Steve Ramsey's like early videos. I love art. I go to a lot of art shows, a lot of art exhibitions. Love being out in nature. That's such a Pacific Northwest thing to say, but going for hikes, being outside is great. I do take classes. I think that's important to take classes in person. And then, I'm just inspired by experimenting in the shop, honestly. Like every time I get in here and I'm not sure what to do, and if I just mess around with something, like pattern plywood's a perfect example of that. I'll futz around with little pieces of patterns and move them around and find new combinations, and that's super fun. And then I love Pinterest. I spend a lot of time on Pinterest because there's so many interesting things on there. There's no shortage of ideas and plans and stuff. It's just a matter of time to devote to each one of these projects. And I'm looking forward to experimenting more, and I'm constantly learning. And I think that's the best thing about this job is that I get to just go on random tangents, build a boat or, experiment with tambour or, I want to try steam bending. And what this company does for me is it supports those tangents. I have found something that actually supports my creative energy. I was a studio artist for years, and that was a really hard business to be in. And this feels so much more natural. Even though when I graduated college, I was like, I'm going to be an artist. I'm going to go, I'm going to show in galleries. You get that motivation when you're in the 20s. You're like, I'm going to be famous. I'm like, that was not the path. It was weird. Like I tried that for 10 years, and it was fun. I met so many cool people and made some really cool artwork. But in terms of supporting me as a person, financially and emotionally, it wasn't there. So this is what YouTube's done for me, is that I feel supported in a way that I haven't. And part of it's a business, part of it's community, and I just get to be a guy in my shop making stuff, which is all I really want to be. So this is the Murphy bar. It's one of my favorite pieces that I've ever made, and I made it for my good friend Eric, and he kind of came up with the concept and I ran with it. He wanted to have a space where he could store liquor bottles and host, like have a dining room table that they can host people at, and but the only stipulation was that it had to fold up into the wall so it could be put away for their apartment, so they had plenty of room. So I think it's like the only time I've like kind of invented a piece of furniture or feel like it's sort of a new kind of furniture. It's just it's a piece that I'm really proud of, and it's been nice because Eric's one of my best friends, so I've just come out and hang out here and drink whiskey at the bar that I built. I will work with my hands until they break. I mean, I don't want them to break anytime soon, but I will always make stuff. I mean, I remember there was a phase when I first moved out to Seattle where I didn't have a shop and I had no access to anything creative, and it was miserable. It was winter. It was awful. I can't live without a space where I'm making stuff. So that's the highest priority. The garage is more square footage than our house, so you can you can see where the priority lies. So I'll live small to afford to do this. We're at the Sloop Tavern. This is like my favorite bar in all of Seattle. It's the first bar I ever went to, and I named my cat after this place, so it holds a pretty special place in my heart.
Is it fulfilling?
I hate it. I'm just dying inside. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, it's incredibly fulfilling. I'm always humbled by the fact that anybody watches what I do. So like the fact that I can just do this is wild to me. The fact that people support me just making stuff in my garage is amazing, and whatever I can do to just like help other people out, or hopefully I'm inspiring people to make other things. And yeah, it's great. It's amazing, especially like when you go and meet folks like at these maker events and stuff, and you're like, either like, oh, I built this, I built that thing. We were just talking, loads of people have my miter station in their shop, or I see pictures of people's shops, and it's like, that's kind of my shop. Like, you got all my plans, and you're like, you built my shop in your shop, and it's very fulfilling. And I'm constantly in shock of like that this job even works, that what I do even works at all. So I'm gonna keep doing it as long as it keeps working. There's no naming convention that's consistent throughout the entire Fast and the Furious franchise, and it drives me insane. So there's Fast 5, there's Fast